Okay, Cadre 4, this is a video on time management, work-life balance. And I know this is a little strange in that I'm actually taking the video off of the screen slides because I can't figure out how to embed the screen slides into the video. So, but I needed to get this done, so please bear with me. And if for some reason this camera falls off of the pedestal, don't worry about it. We'll get where we want to go in the process of this, and this isn't going to be the most polished presentation in the world, but I think it'll get the key points. So anyway, the whole point of time management is not managing time, it's managing yourself. And one of the things that is probably the hardest about time management, of all the things that you need to do, is this thing called work-life balance. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. One of them actually is the notion of understanding what work-life balance really means. And secondly, it's the issue of this self-control, self-discipline, prioritization for self, being willing to take care of yourself. We tend to put others first. And one of the things that we do in this program, I think that probably is a good thing, and we certainly aren't going to stop it, is the notion, we hit the notion very hard of servant leader. And that there's some sense about being a servant leader means you don't take care of yourself, you take care of everybody else but yourself. Well, that has diminishing returns to it, and we can't all be like Gandhi and wander around in the desert serving people and really not paying much attention to ourselves. We simply can't do that. And you're in a public role in terms of being a leader, and certainly you are there to serve the public, but you're serving the public on behalf of the whole point of democracy, which is an educated citizenry. Or you're serving democracy in the sense of how you're taking care of individuals who have the greatest need in society. So it's very hard to do in terms of work-life balance because we think that we're not doing our job if we're not there 100% of the time, and that's just unrealistic. Well, a couple of things that we want to do is talk about the whole notion of work-life balance and understand the concepts behind it, and then take a look a little bit about how you use your time and the expectations in terms of outcomes of how you might begin to do some things to change. And one of the things that you all have done, I've read quite a few of them, is the time management Google Doc conversation, which probably was one of the most lively of the conversations on the Google Doc, in the Google Doc format, which really pleased me. It meant that you've thought about this a little bit, and some of these concepts either have been something you've practiced for a while, or at least they struck home to you and you began to think about what you can do to improve. So I think some people have this notion in their head that this balance beam kind of thing, or if you take a square or rectangle and divide it in half, that there's work on one side and life on the other side, and that those basically should be equal. And that is probably the greatest fallacy that exists in work-life balance, in that you may find that you can get a 50-50 kind of thing, but it won't be moment to moment or week to week or even year to year. For example, that's kind of what in education we have, either as administrators a month off, or as teachers 2.5 months off, holidays off, and those kinds of things, so that there is a little bit more of a work-life balance than we probably think there is. And then you get to the point of age 55 or age 65, or sometimes really old, like 75, and you retire. And so as a result, the work side diminishes, but the life side expands, but it isn't a moment-to-moment kind of thing. So you have to look at a big picture of what your life is all about before you begin to be terribly self-critical about not having this 50-50 balance, because it isn't going to happen day to day, week to week. And for most of you in the age bracket that you are, it isn't going to happen even year to year. Things will change in your career as you have children, and then they go off and go to college and get married and get jobs and those kinds of things, and that work-life thing shifts all the way through that lifespan journey. So sometimes it's like it is on the left, and sometimes it's like it is on the right, and basically it is a dynamic kind of relationship. those of you that get involved in hiring staff know that, or evaluating staff, know that March, April, and May are very torrid months in the sense of the work expectations that are there, and you're kind of on the hot seat all the time, trying to get things done, trying to get things processed. But it's also a big time for, if you have school-age children, it's a big time for activities, and so trying to make all of that work becomes very, very difficult. So I think there's some things that you need to consider in this work-life balance notion, is that presence need not always be physical. For example, while you may be spending 3/4 of your day in a work setting and only 1/4 of your day with your family, spouse or family, you are actually spending more time with them than you think you are, because from somewhere 6 to 8 hours, you're sleeping, so you're there, you're just not engaged with them. And probably the concept that we need to give some more thought to is the notion of engagement. Engagement in work, engagement in family, and again, the dynamic balance of that. But as my children were growing up, one of the things that I never did was I never missed one of their activities. I just said, there's a lot of things I'm not going to be able to do, but that's one of the things that I am never going to miss, and I didn't. While they were going through school, their school-age years in middle school, and then into high school. And it was partly, that was just simply my physical presence there. I do remember from time to time taking some work with me, so that when they were not actively involved in the game, I was probably checking on some work, doing some different things that I needed to do, but at least I was physically there. But at the same time, engagement, when family vacations rolled around, that was the time to be engaged in their activities and engaged in family activities, and not be carrying a notebook of papers around while we were hiking in the Rocky Mountains or something like that. But here's the other point, is that no matter what, my physical presence, whether my physical presence was there weren't many places that our children and family couldn't go that my presence wasn't there, in the sense of it provided the food that they ate, the clothes that was on their back, the automobiles that got them to their activities, the house that they lived in, on and on and on. And had it not been for the work-life part of it, they wouldn't have had the kind of things that they had. And while certainly we weren't incredibly wealthy, we did have above average means to do a lot of things. And so, you know, my presence was there in a lot of ways that wasn't necessarily physical. So those things don't replace you, but you know, they're still part of the equation. That's why you work, is to get the things that you need, that you want, so that your family can have other activities and meet other priorities. And somebody has to pay the dues or pay the freight for that kind of thing. And so sometimes the work side of things would tend to expand way beyond the excuse me, the family or other side in terms of balance. Well, I think here's one of the key concepts, is that in work-life balance, the best thing that you can do, because you're never going to get to be 100% good at this kind of thing. You're going to overdo one side or underdo another, overdo the other side, underdo another kind of thing. And so one of the things that I think is really important that I learned as a result of being a superintendent down in Kansas, after a board meeting, or during a board meeting, the board called for an executive session, and they were evaluating me, and I thought, oh my, things are not going to go very well here, and I'm going to be in big trouble. And so we got into executive session. The board said, we're going to give you the biggest salary increase that we've ever given, and we may get some flack for that, but we think you've deserved it. But in order to get that raise, here's what you're going to have to do. You are going to have to be gone from the school district and this community for 10 consecutive days. If you don't, then we're canceling the raise and your salary will just continue as to what it was. And I said, what's the deal? And they said, we think you're just here too much, that you can't be effective when you're here 100% of the time and basically trying to do everything and so forth. you do great things, but you're going to burn yourself out. And so went on a vacation that summer to Estes Park, where we'd gone for years and years and years. In the first 3 days, you're still thinking about work, and after that, you kind of get into the vacation mode. And I was really surprised that that last 5 days of how work was not even on my radar screen, and how when we finally got back after being gone for 10 days, it was, you had to relearn kind of some of the routines in the house. I remember getting ready for work for that next morning, and geez, I couldn't even remember how to shave and do things like that, because I hadn't done that for 10 days and I'd gotten into a whole different routine. Anyway, it was the best vacation that we ever had, and simply because we took 100% to be engaged at that particular point, and that paid dividends, because the kids still remember those vacations back when they were teenagers. So when I play golf, I play golf. When I watch football, I watch football. When I'm doing Doan work, I'm doing Doan work. When I'm watching a television show, I'm watching a television show. So whatever I'm doing, I'm going to do it 100%. I'm not going to try to multitask. And one of the things that research is absolutely crystal clear about is that there are very few people, if any, who can multitask and be 100% effective in the domains in which they're trying to multitask. In other words, one of those things or two of those things are going to suffer if you try to do two things at once. So when you look at this, and as I read the Google Docs, I was surprised by the number of people that were dealing with similar challenges in work-life balance, but also had some successes in those. And I certainly encourage you to read those Google Docs, because your peers have found some successful ways of dealing with the work-life balance kind of issue. Well, I don't know how helpful that was. Was simply trying to give you a summary of the issues of work-life balance and some of the concepts and constructs behind it. It's something you constantly have to work at and practice. And I guess the best word is being intentional about wherever it is that you are. Be there 100%. Be there heart, mind, and soul, that kind of thing. Be unified in what it is that you're doing, regardless of what it is. You're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to feel less stressed about yourself and your job, and you'll be more productive, so that when you then do whatever it is that you're doing, you're at your best. Let me give you one more example. I can remember because I felt that work was what defined me, and as a result, work was very important. I enjoyed it. In fact, I loved it, kind of thing. That I would watch Sunday afternoon football, and then Monday morning could not. We'd get together with the principals on Monday morning to talk about the week, and they'd be talking about the football game, and I would sit there and say, oh, I didn't know that happened, and I didn't know that happened. In other words, my attention even on the football game was halfway, and certainly what I was doing, probably some work for school, was not being done as well, although I thought it was. I usually found out that there were some holes in it that I hadn't thought through, simply because of the distractions of trying to do more than one thing or multitasking as such. Well, we'll talk more about work-life challenges, but work-life balance challenges and strategies, but I hope this was helpful.